need to get something from one room, so I go over there to get it, and when I get there, I've forgotten why I went. Between being nervous and between being old, I'm probably going to forget to say stuff that I should say, so then that makes me nervous, and I've never liked my voice, although in the movie industry, I have people tell me I sounded like Sam Elliott and Billy Bob Thornton. So, I don't know, maybe no one likes your voice because it sounds different in your head than it does when you hear it on recording. So, and I have some video in there of me, and oh, geez, do I sound like that? So that's the way it goes for me. I did make something pretty clear, though, is that, you know, if I stop and have to gather my thoughts, just give me some time. So, oh, yeah. When I was doing my presentation, I had a little bit of help. So this is my imaginary friend. Like, should I do this? Should I do that? So he like popped along. I guess he's got some advice for me. Oh. I'm sorry. And then I go wondering, see? She's trying to video me, and I'm over here wandering around. So, stop apologizing. Okay, everybody knows that I'm nervous, so that's good enough. So. Crowd. How do I do that? Speaking of old men and not having, you know, very sharp and quick minds, I'm reminded of this guy I know in Florida who had a lot of land, and he had some orange trees on it, orange grove, I guess, and he grabbed him a 5-gallon bucket and he went down to the pond where these trees were all at, and was going to pick some oranges. When he rounded the corner and saw the pond and the orange trees, he also noticed there was a pile of clothes on the ground. And he looked a little bit further, and there were 3 young women, completely unclothed, in the pond splashing around. Well, he was kind of stunned, like, what? So you figure out what's going on. Of course, by this time, all the ladies had seen him, and they're all over there down in the water and hiding, and they're looking at him, and he's looking at them. And one of the ladies said, "You can stand there all you want to, mister, but we ain't getting out." And the quick thinking guy said, "Do what you want to do. I'm just here to feed the alligators." We call this housekeeping when we do stuff in the military. So one of the things I want to explain is my status up here. And the reason I'm here is not because I'm a master gardener. The reason I'm here is because I'm an iris enthusiast. And Carol and I talk, I guess, maybe, I don't know, at least once a week, right? Yep. Leading up to this meeting, there was probably 5 or 6 times in the past 2 days. I know I said, "Carol, should I do this? Carol, should I do that?" But, you know, a few weeks back, I was working on getting my irises divided and potted and so forth. And she said, "You know, you really ought to bring your knowledge of irises and stuff to the master gardeners." And that's what led us to talking about, you know, maybe the potential to sell some and to let people know about it. And so we approached Frank, and I told Frank that I would make sure that everyone understood that I was not a master gardener and trying to use that name to sell my little hobby business, the Little Iris Boutique. The fact is because I have the Little Iris Boutique and all these irises and stuff, Carol suggested that I speak from that point of view. So I'm not here as a master gardener. I'm here as my little hobby business, as I call it, because it's not exactly a business. I haven't gone and filed for a license. It's just perhaps something I can do to make a few dollars, and I don't know, I really enjoy irises. And that's how it came about. I was a master gardener in 2016. In 2017, they had a guy who spoke in irises, and I don't know, I just never had thought about irises, and then all of a sudden I fell in love with them. So in 2018, I think it was our first seminar, I ran into the Irish lady from the Flint River, and there went $100 or more. So. And then the next year we had another seminar, and there went another $100 or more. So that's how it all happened, and Carol had suggested I speak coming from that status. So, and at the same time we thought, I don't know, with the symposiums, we always have vendors, and I thought, and she thought, you know, if we have another educational event at a Master Gardener General Meeting, why can't we just, you know, bring a few things along there and have a little, like a vendor table? So if anybody is interested in irises and buying some afterwards, they're there. But my purpose here is to teach you some basics about irises, and if no one buys anything, that's fine. They're here for your convenience. But having made that clear, that's why we have the two things going on. There's a catalog over here. When we take questions later on, I'll pass the catalog around because there are just numbers on those things, but there are pictures in here. So we'll pass that around later, and people can look at it if they're interested. If nothing else, just look at the pretty pictures. I have inside the catalog, there's paper clipped, clamped in a little piece of paper. If you see something you're interested in, pull out off and write it down, because some of them only have one or two of them. So if you're interested in it, you know, and you can't remember the names and the numbers, so if you're interested in anything, just pull a little tab out of the inside of that thing and write it down. There's an inventory sheet on the front that tells you how many I have of each one, and you'll see if anybody's already looked, there are purple, blue, and pink. I don't even know how to read colors. So blue and pink. The blue ones are tall ones, and the little ones are where I got my name from, the Little Iris Boutique. They're the dwarfs. So you can hardly buy a dwarf when you go to the big box stores. In the Army, and I've never forgotten it, to tell somebody, tell them what you're going to tell them, and tell them what you told them. I've never got a lot of T's in there. Tell them what you're going to tell them what you said. So, I'm going to tell you just briefly what we're going to talk about. This is general knowledge on irises. This is not any involved stuff. The guy who I saw in 2017 spoke about hybridizing irises, and it wasn't something that I was interested in. I don't think the average gardener or average purchaser of irises is interested in hybridizing, so I'm not even going to talk about that. But most people are concerned about the history, some information, some facts about the irises, and of course, digging and planting and dividing and so forth. So we have something on that, and a little section on pest and disease, of course. So, when I was doing some research on the iris, I already know a few things about that, but I wasn't sure all of the history. Some of you will know some of these. Does anybody know that it comes from the word rainbow? Yeah, that was a new one for me. On my business card, I had made it in the colors of a rainbow because you can get irises in just about every color there is. So I thought that's why I would choose the design that I did. State flower, Tennessee. Anybody from Tennessee? Did you know that? 25th wedding anniversary. Well, I'm a guy. I guess I didn't even know there was such thing as an anniversary flower. Women have to tell people that usually. So anyway, I thought it was interesting. So we have the birthstone. We have a birth flower. So that's if you're born in February, there you go. Overall, can anybody read that? How's the back row doing? Good, okay. Because I wasn't sure how big it was going to be with the screen stuff. History, we have some good history and some bad history, it turns out. King Louis VII loved the purple iris. And you see that fleur-de-lis all the time. You see it on the Saints helmet. All you Saints fans. But it goes like this and comes down and it looks like an iris. That was King Louis VII's favorite thing, and he just went crazy with it and so forth. While I was learning about this, I also learned something else that is not so nice. So the little symbol he made, all of the colonies that France had across the world, they had slaves, and they stamped them with that fleur-de-lis symbol and branded them so that if they ever got lost, someone would know where to return them to. And since 2015, there's been a small movement to have the Saints change their helmets and change their little logo and stuff. So you don't hear much about it, and I didn't hear much about it, and I didn't know about it, but there you go. There's some Irish history. We don't. Probably anybody who's ever looked at paintings and art knows, and you can read the names up here. I'm not going to read them to you. It is widely used in art because it's just considered a wonderful flower, a graceful flower. Lilies. Colors, I mentioned lots of colors. There are colors of rainbow. However, everything except bright red. If you get one that's red, it's going to be some off shade of red. A couple of years back, with the Southern Living who comes in here once in a while and does a thing, they had worked very hard and finally had bred what they call a true red azalea, and I bought one. So, and it's because I can tell because I'm semi-colorblind. Because I can tell it's pretty much red, but they haven't got one that's red in the iris. So, you'll see black irises advertised. I have one, but basically it is really, really dark purple. Yellow and passion. You might be able to guess these. Blue iris means faith and hope. White, and then of course the purple. This is where it's been used in King Louis VII, purple and all the royalty and so forth that he used. There are, when I did my research, there are 9 types, but personally speaking, I've narrowed it down to 6, and these are the ones that most people hear about, the ones that most people pay attention to. So the bearded irises, German irises, so they're the ones that have the beard. I think pretty much everybody here knows what a bearded iris looks like. There's a picture, and then we have the dwarf bearded iris, and another little picture. Once again, this is the German iris classification. Then, of course, people know who have been master gardeners for a while, like the Japanese iris. They're a little more dainty than the bearded iris, they're usually smaller. Siberian irises. How many people have Siberian or Japanese? Once again, smaller, dainty. Louisiana iris. I had some, I bought it at a Master Gardener plant sale a while back, and then I read about them, and then I gave them away because I think someone sort of indicated that they were slightly invasive. So, but once again, the Zen iris and the Siberian and the Japanese, they all look somewhat similar to me. So, this one, I don't recall ever seeing, but it's considered one of the favorites, and there's a sample picture of it. American Iris Society recognizes 6 types of bearded iris. As the heading up here is bearded iris, so we're sort of narrowing down, and we're going to forget about the other different types I've talked about, because I'm going to talk about, oh, well, I'm in charge. I get to talk about what I want to. And I like bearded irises. So, the miniature dwarf bearded iris, we can see, it's like a shrunken iris, 8 inches tall. I mean, that's not much. I happen to have over here my favorite, and that's why I have it in bold here, the standard dwarf bearded, because they grow 1.5 foot, give or take. I think most of mine average around 12 to 15 inches. So they look like a tall, everybody here's seen a tall bearded iris, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you know that you can see them, the leaves stick up so far, but then the flowers will come up here, they stick way up above the leaves. The difference between a standard dwarf bearded and a tall bearded is the dwarf bearded irises, typically the blossoms and the blooms come about 2 or 3 inches above the leaves. So it makes it more in an area here instead of way up in the air. So that's the difference between, just because it's a standard dwarf bearded doesn't mean it's small leaves, but it still sticks up a long stalk. It's actually shorter down near the leaves too. So the intermediate bearded, I've never seen one for sale, but they're like the other ones. They just basically classify these based on the height. Border bearded, I see them for sale. When I look around on my catalog, I have a couple of them over there. You'll see more tall bearded irises for sale than any other type. And you won't see border bearded, you won't see intermediate bearded very often. Miniature tall bearded. Everybody who seems to hybridize and get them classified sticks with standard dwarf and tall bearded. And by far, tall bearded is the most popular. It's usually sold in the big box stores. You look through the catalog, there are more tall bearded irises for sale than all the rest of them combined. So, who here knows the parts of an iris? And I'm not going to teach you every little part, but if you're interested in irises at all, you should learn at least the 4 basic parts. President.
The stem.
What's this guy right there? Who knows what that is?
Standard?
That's a standard. It's easy for me to remember, which I don't have much of a memory because I think of soldiers walking around carrying standards in the old days, so they stick up in the air. But yes, that's the standard. Not you. Who knows what that is?
The fall.
The fall. Thank you, Jim. That's the fall. I know everybody knows what a beard is, right? And I saved that for last. Who knows? Let me back up here. Who knows what that is? When they talk about irises and when they get classified, and whenever people have created one through hybridizing that they want the American Iris Society to name and have a registered name for, they look at all of these sorts of things. They obviously look at the standard, they look at the falls, they look at the beards, they want different colors, and it gives you a lot of combinations. So this guy right here is called a signal. And you'll see it when you see a lot of these things. You may not pay attention to it because, oh, that's a pretty flower and you're going to get it. But they look at these signals, they look at how pronounced they are, they look at how the color is and how it blends and how the people who do these sorts of things, that drive you crazy with all they do to sit there and judge these things because they win contests every year. Some of the ones I have for sale won them 10 years ago. So they look at all this kind of stuff when they decide to rate an iris, grade it, and give it a name. So when you have something that, oh, I have this one, here's the mom and here's the dad, and just like you would for a pedigree dog, they send these things off with all the parents and have it reviewed and say, yes, this is definitely a new and unique iris. So that is the signal.
And Chuck,
Yes,
is the signal, it's all part of that one petal, right?
I'm going to show you one. So, and then there's the beard. There is one more, and I got you coming. There's one more that you don't see very often. But when they look at an iris and they decide, oh, this is the greatest iris there ever was, they may base it on a thing called a style arm. And you don't see these. I have one. Out of the 50 kinds that I have one that has a style arm. So this is what it looks like. That little thing, it looks like a tongue or a hand sticking out. You don't see them on very many irises. And so if you have one with that on it, oh, whoa, this is great and wonderful. So all the different things they look at when they talk about irises and they give them a rating. So, does this better answer your question? That's a signal right there.
And it's not something in addition, but it's all part of that.
It's part of the leaf. Yes, it's like somebody came along and airbrushed part of the leaf.
Okay.
Right.
So it's just the white part, what about that strip of purple in the middle? Is that
You're talking about that little stripe?
Yeah,
That's all part of the
it's
signal?
all part of the signal.
Yeah, and when they rate these things, that signal gets, they go to really minuscule evaluations of, well, look at how long the blend is from here to the standard of the fall color. And look how quickly it blends. It's so really pronounced. So they just do all this sort of stuff. So all these signals will be different. Some will be heavier than others and more pronounced.
Chuck?
Chuck.
Yes.
Sorry. Thanks. In the one with the style arm, it didn't look like it doesn't have a signal?
If it does, it may not be able to be seen here because the color here is different than the color here. This is where the signal will be. Sometimes they're bigger. It might be along here, but the photograph is probably difficult to tell.
Okay.
When they hybridize, do they always use like one color, like white, and mix with something else? No.
Anything you want.
Because sometimes I had heard that sometimes an iris will revert back to just white if they've been hybridized. Is that not true?
There are a lot of places that tell you that they don't come true from seeds. And I'm not sure what that means because they have to have a seed in order to get a new iris. But then if that iris produces seeds with itself through pollination, then it won't come true from that. It has to be divided. This is one reason why irises are expensive when they're new, because then you have to have 5 of them, then you divide them, and there's 10, and there's 20, and then there's 50, there's 100, and then people start selling them, but they don't sell because they don't have very many. So I have read about irises changing colors. A lady who has about 50 or 60, Johnny and Square Dancers.
Glennis?
Yeah, Glennis, yes. They have about 50 or 60 running down the line, and all of a sudden one of them's yellow. So, I can't figure it out either. So, I think most people realize that irises need lots of sun. They don't like a lot of rain. Of course, it seems to me like every time I read about a plant that I'm going to pot or put in the dirt, they won't well drain soil. I don't know if very many who say planted in heavy Georgia Southern clay. So that's repetitive. 6 to 8 hours of sunlight a day. They need, and I'm talking about the South, they need more light up north than they do down south because we have a hotter sun. So it doesn't, I mean, if you put one in 4 hours of sunlight a day, it's going to live, but it probably won't produce flowers. So, the tall bearded irises are useful in border plantings. Border is something I wish I had, but you see them in magazines all the time. They go along the house and they go in and out, and people have small plants up front, maybe some rocks, and then some intermediate plants, and then stuff in the back, and it just looks gorgeous. And if they've done everything the way they should do it, then they all will bloom at various different times, so that the border has always got something blooming. So when you use these things in a border planting, they typically find themselves in the back because they range up to 42, 45 inches tall. You can put them in a big patch or a field, like you might find the Dutch tulips. You can do them like that. I'll also tell you that I didn't put this fact here, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. If you've ever planted an iris, you'll notice that the rhizome looks like this, and then the fan comes up like that. It has a little bit of a slope to it. I have read, I have never tested, if you plant 40 or 50 of them in a place and you want them all to bloom at the same time, all the fans need to be aimed the same way. If you want them to bloom for a longer period of time, but just have 10 or 15 and then more and more and to bloom for a longer period of time, spin it around, turn it this way, and put all those fans at different angles, and they will bloom at different times. The very same iris variety, but it will bloom at different times. But if that fan all faces the same direction, they're all going to be blooming pretty much close to the same time. I've never tested it, but I read it, so I'm going to pass it along. Here are some of mine that I have in the strip in the house, and this is just a big group of them of the same kind. Dwarf bearded iris, same thing, 6 to 8 hours of sunlight a day. Just because it's smaller doesn't mean it needs less sun. Well drained soil, useful for border plantings, but you're going to find it along the front and rock gardens. So and I'm going to show you a picture of one right here, and they also are useful for containers. So because they're not as big as these guys get, and then here was one that combines a container and a rock garden that I think looks nice. And once again, you can see that the blossoms, the blooms, aren't way above the leaves like the tall bearded irises are. Did I spell that right? Denise, did I spell that right? Irises and daylilies, I don't know, it's like should I get one, should I get the other ones? I think the daylily is probably one of the most common plants that people choose to plant around their home and so forth. When I drive in and out of my subdivision, I see them all the time. Although they're pretty much all the same yellow and orange color. But it's like, to me, it's like liking cats or dogs. But I wasn't about to use that analogy because I'm sure I'm going to get in trouble. No telling what I like the most. And then I was going to use an analogy of, it was like a Corvette and a Mustang, but then I don't want Beverly getting mad at me, the advantages of an iris over a daylily, in my opinion, the bloom obviously lasts longer. One bloom on a daylily, well, that's where it got its name from, right? It lasts 1 day. I've even tried to get one to last. You're going to bloom 2 days. You're going to, no, it won't. It just won't. So, on the other hand, you can snap an iris off and go put it in a
Vase.
the bud vase. You put it in a bud vase. I have about 10 or 15 bud vases, and I use them for my photographs, and I use them for places to put irises. So I have them going all the time. I will snip them, put them in there, put a dash of this stuff that I have about 100 packets of, and a bloom will last 5 to 7 days. Not like cut flowers that you will get from Walmart or Kroger or something, but 5 to 7 days, pretty soon there's another one out there blooming over. But you won't do that with a daylily. So I like them because the bloom lasts longer. When you get ready to plant one, you only have to dig a hole about that deep. When you get ready to plant a daylily, you got to pull out a shovel and a mattock and who knows what. So they're easier to divide. In fact, Andy asked me about dividing daylilies a few weeks back, and I divide them both. So I'm not against daylilies. I have about 10 or 12 varieties. But I can tell you right now, I'd much rather divide an iris than I would be a daylily. It's just a pain in the butt. And then, of course, after you divide them, it's just easier to plant. You're going to see me plant one here later on in the video. But when you plant a daylily, you have to dig a deeper hole and a wider hole. So another thing is you have to mulch your daylilies. Do not mulch your irises. Put them out there in the bare ground. Don't throw anything over the top of them. They like to see that sun with their tuber chest. However, having said all of that, because irises typically bloom a little bit before daylilies do, they make good companion plants. So if you want to mix them around among each other, have at it, because when the irises are done blooming, then here come the daylilies. So they make a nice companion plant. Oh yeah, I had to do this because I didn't get sued. You never know if you make someone sick. So, I have to, this is a So if anybody wants to leave now, then I don't know if my speaker's working. It didn't make a noise earlier, so let me see if we can get it to work. We may have to pause this thing.
If I'm digging irises out of amended soil, I prefer to use a fork. If I was in yard topsoil or unamended topsoil, I would probably use a shovel. And then I go ahead and loosen it up all around, and you can see me prying here, pushing it up, and leave as many of the roots as I can. And once I get it loosened up, good, then I'm going to go ahead and reach down and grab it close to where the rhizomes are, where it has a lot of strength. And then I'm going to pull it out slowly so I don't break any of the rhizomes. Shake it off, and it looks like I have 3 nice healthy rhizomes here.
Now we're going to go ahead and divide the iris. Once again, this is the iris that you saw me dig up. I don't know if people are scared to divide them. I was when I did my first ones. What do I do? I looked at videos on the internet. So sometimes it's easier to learn how to do it when you see it in real life than it is a video. But I feel compelled to show off my arms here once again.
This is the clump that I dug up a few minutes ago, and you can see here we have nice healthy rhizomes, 1, 2, 3 of them, a couple of babies on the side. So we're going to go ahead and break these apart, grasp them close down there where the rhizome and the roots are, and just snap it off. pull it away easily to drag the roots with it. And now I'll grab the other side, do the same thing, pull the roots for it. And then now I'm going to go ahead and cut off the old spent rhizome, which is usually dark black, dark brown, clip it off. And now I'm going to trim the roots. The general rule of thumb is in any kind of a plant, if you're trimming the top, you're going to need to trim the roots too. Keep the two balanced out. And now I'm going to go ahead and trim the fans. I leave about 8 inches. It's really not that big of a deal. Some people clip them shorter, but you can see here that it's easy work. Cut them off here again. And grab the last big one here and whack it off. And we have 3 nice, healthy, new irises to plant. There's a couple of babies on the side.
Why do you have to cut the fans?
If you pull up the plant and some of the roots naturally don't make it with the plant to begin with, but then you're going to trim the roots back anyhow, then you don't have enough feeding coming from the bottom to take care of the fans. In addition to that, there are some people on the internet who are supposed experts and so on. Who here has irises? Hello. So, how many of you go out in the fall to the ones that are sitting in the soil? How many of you go out there and clip them off like you saw me do here?
Really?
Not so many. They say you should go out and clip off the tops and shorten them, but the people who are against it say you shouldn't do that because it generates growth. Because you have a lot of roots down here, and then you don't have as much up here, and when you cut off the top like that, it says, well, we need to do something. We're pumping food up, we're pumping the energy and water, so it spurs growth. I have cut some off this year for the first time that are existing in the yard, so I want to see what it goes like, but there's a pro and con. So, when you, yeah.
One of the reasons I cut mine is because when I transplant them, they're too top heavy and they fall over.
Right.
So you have to cut them back so they're not top heavy.
But what about the ones that you haven't even dug out of the ground? Do you cut those back?
Not usually.
See, and that's what I'm talking about. Some people say you should cut them back.
I don't mean to offend, but my big complaint with irises is they've got that, I mean, it blooms and it's beautiful and I love it, but then I've got these fans that are dying and I cut it back because they get all brown and ugly.
Some do and some don't. I would say that if they're getting brown and ugly, they might not be getting enough water in addition to the amount of sun they're getting. It's one possibility. We'll talk about some of that later on at the very last part of the thing here where we talk about things. But you can see in the videos that I made here, because you didn't get a good look at all of the irises that I have, but that one that you saw me dig up, it was perfectly green. It didn't have anything on it. And if I walked out there right now, it would look like that still. Sometimes during the summertime, if they've gone through a little bit of lack of water, they'll tend to start to get some sort of browning along the edge and so forth. So. Maybe I'm stuck up, I don't know, whatever it works, but I'm going to, just quickly, I'm not endorsing Lowe's, but the Evergreen that they have down there, the soil conditioner that they have is a very good price. It's a medium-sized material, and then I mix this with what they call topsoil. Topsoil, as everybody should know by now, is a misnomer. It is not topsoil. They don't sell dirt anymore. They sell manufactured topsoil, which basically is like soil conditioner but smaller pieces. So, I take about a half a bag of soil conditioner, a half a bag of topsoil, which is a smaller bag, and then I grab sand for weight. And as we all learned in master gardening class, if you were to take a bunch of dirt from your yard, put it into a pot and cram it down, put water on it, it's going to sit there. But if you took and filled this whole thing up with sand and poured water on it, I don't care how much you pound the sand down, water's going to run through it. Sand prevents this stuff from clumping up and becoming too settled and like sediment. It keeps it, the water able to flow through it. And as Jim had noted, it gives it some weight. When you plant the iris, it will grow in the spring. The fans will get tall and the bloom will get tall, and it needs something with some body to hold it in place. So that's the way that I make my soil. If I have raised bed, it only has that in it. And if I go out to a part of the yard and convert it over to do irises, I bring up my little tiller and I mix the same sort of stuff in with the existing soil. So I just had good luck with it. I ain't saying it's the best. I would say don't ever go out and get potting soil and put iris in them. Potting soil, as you know, is vermiculite. What's the other one, Frank? Perlite. Has perlite, stuff that holds moisture, and we don't need that for irises. So,
How much sand do you put in your mix?
about a half a bag.
A half, okay.
Yeah, I have. I went and bought it's about this wide and about this high and about that wide. It's a thing that you go mix up concrete in. I bought it in Lowe's. And so that's what I use to mix up my dirt in. So I put it in there and I grab my fork and I just mix it up and then I pot and do whatever stuff from there. If I'm going out to part of the yard, of course I just take the bags out with me. But it's not rocket science. It's not like some exact measurement. Oh, that was like 2/3 of the bag. It's just, it's a good, don't go crazy with it. But it looks like this. I don't know how well you can see that back there, but you can see the sand in it. You can see the bigger particles, and of course there's some smaller particles in the sand. So it's just a good blend for me. When I have put these in and I pack it down real hard and I water it with the shower head on the water hose, and believe me, it goes away in 2 seconds. I mean, it's gone. So it drains well. Here we're going to talk about planting an iris, but before we do that, and before anybody forgets, I brought a couple of irises up here so you can see what it looks like firsthand. Do I have a volunteer? Thank you, Denise. Come on up, give her a hand. All right.
I'm going the wrong way.
No. But you can.
Mushroom compost?
I'm
What do you need
gonna-
me to do?
I want to, you remember my mask? So, here we go, this guy. See, I have dug this up. Yeah. And I've cleaned it off, and I've already trimmed the roots, I've already trimmed the top, and I've already marked it. So, you watched the video, right?
I did.
You want to take a look at this and see if you can figure out how to divide it?
I think I could.
Don't worry, I bought napkins for you. Put your hand down here real close with it.
Right here?
Down in there and break it apart. Bend it down. Pull on the root. Yank them a little bit.
That's tough.
Like a tough one,
That one doesn't have to.
yeah. Keep going.
I'm not patient. You don't understand. I have no patience. That's why I don't do this. That one's done.
Yeah, let's see.
Here, put this on my back.
Yeah. See how tough that guy is over there. There he goes. Right. You want to do another one?
Sure. You want to share the wealth now?
You see it too? Yeah, go ahead and, we don't care about that little baby in the middle. There you go.
That was a lot easier.
Yeah, right.
And then that's it?
Yeah, that's
This is
it.
just a baby.
Yeah, and I would never try to, I mean, some people can, but you pull this off, if you can see that guy sticking up, it'll have 2 or 3 roots, and if you want to baby it for a couple of years, I never mess with it, so, I just plant them back in this whole thing. So, I appreciate, did you wipe your hands off?
Sort of.
Yeah. Look over here.
Oh,
You can use some of that.
thank you.
Yeah,
I didn't know how to get through today.
so,
It was really easy.
Denise,
What?
you want one of these?
Yes, please. Oh, there's a bag. Can I have that?
What color is
Yeah.
it?
Well, oh yeah, what color is it?
Green. What does it say? What does it?
Thank you, Jan. 17.
17. You can check the catalog later and see what you have.
Okay.
Okay. This is a 15. Who wants to divide it? This one's easy to see because you can, I don't know how well you can see in the back there, but, this dark one right here, that's the old one. That's last year's bloom. And it's very easy to see. Here on the side, the white guys over here, the light green and white, those are the new ones. So this one's a very easy one to see how to break it off. Put your fingers down, get them close together and just, there we go.
As easy as you think.
Just keep pulling and tugging, now work this up loose. There you go, right in the bucket.
Chuck, will the old iris plant
Yes.
rebloom?
Excuse me?
Will the plant that bloomed this year, will it bloom again next year?
No.
Do you want me to do one more trick?
Yeah, and then let me show you something. This made a bloom, this dark one, and it's gone. And it put out 2 new rhizomes. So these 2 guys will bloom next year. We're gonna get rid of that.
So you
Yes.
just,
Yes,
So-
you do
so that old one, you just throw it away?
it. Yes. Yeah, just work it. I usually do a music instead of some boring speaker.
That's nice, and I can clearly see how that would come on.
Right. So, this is the bad one, and so you can either take, these are the 2 tools that I use the most. You know what that is, don't you,
Yeah, I
Carol?
sure do.
Yes, a handy one. And then, of course, the scissors. So, depending on how I'm feeling, sometimes this is gonna come off easy because it's just right there. So, I wanna throw that away, and there's the new one. So, it's easy. Hey, you want one?
So the part that you threw away won't bloom, and it also didn't have leaves right now?
It will not bloom again. It blooms one time. And I'm going to, I thought I had, let me, if I didn't have a picture or not, I can't remember. When you, maybe you can see it from here. From this side of the iris to this side, do you notice the roots are lighter and then you get darker? This is the part that's the old one, this is the new one, this is dying, it's no longer good anymore. It does this thing one time. This is also why you have to divide irises, because the iris rhizome blooms and then it sends out more rhizomes, and then next year they bloom, and then they send out more rhizomes, and pretty soon they're running into each other from the one over beside it. You follow me? And then the roots are crowded, and they say, there's just no room to do any flowering. That's why you have to divide them.
So, how, every year then you divide?
It depends on how far apart you planted them. 3 to 4 years. If you put them 18 inches apart, it's about 3 or 4 years. And then I'm going to show you why it's so easy to plant. Did you have a question?
Yeah, okay, so the old rhizome won't bloom again.
Never.
But it will keep producing more babies, more
No,
rhizomes.
it is done.
It's completely done.
That's right. The three that you saw on the sides, next year, they will do a blossom, they will put out new rhizomes, and then they will go dark. So, here we go with the planting. This is why I like irises over daylilies. This talks about what Jim was talking about. You'll see me press down the soil here real hard, because if you pack this loosely, and then these leaves get up this high, and then a bloom gets up this high, it doesn't take much to start pulling it over. So that's one of the reasons I use sand. It's one of the reasons why you're watching me here in pack. Someone asked me about putting compost, or was it you? Right? I'll show you what I use here when I plant.
Yeah, I'm going to plant this in special soil that I prepared. Shallow hole, a little bit of a mound in the middle. Then I'm going to sprinkle some special fertilizer on the top. Part the roots like you would the hair on your head, for example. Lay it on the mound, press it down, the roots into the ground to sort of get it holding up, and then cover it with some dirt. Push these down so that it holds the iris in place a little bit. Press firmly. I've learned that if you don't press this thing deep into the ground, here we go. And then the plant is going to get tall, and the first rain comes along, it's going to get wet and lean over and pull itself out of the soil. Finish up by putting a little bit of fertilizer around the outside, rubbing it in, and that's pretty much all there is to it. It took about a minute to plant.
So, the places that I go to learn how to do what I know, and again, I don't claim to be a genius or know everything about it. I know enough, at least to the average person, I could be some benefit, and I seem to do okay. Irises are easy to grow, but the fertilizer I put on the bottom, I like to use. I had very good success with it last year. It's called triple superphosphate, and it stimulates root growth. And I ordered it offline at Amazon, but Shriners sells it at twice the price if you're interested. So that's triple superphosphate. And then around the top, I just put the regular blossoming type general purpose fertilizer. So it just sort of, when it rains on it, it will saturate the soil, dribble some through. But mostly for the bottom, I like to throw in a little pinch of the triple superphosphate. Planting rhizomes.
When is the best time to plant, to divide and?
This is like if I had my druthers, I would have done all of these a week and a half or 2 weeks earlier. In Georgia, we probably should be dividing in the middle of August and be all done by the middle of September.
And Chuck, the bloom fertilizer that you use, what is that?
That's just, I'm not trying to recommend one over another. I have 2 different kinds at home, but if you go to either of the places, you'll find the green container with the yellow, the orange, and the purple. It's like what, shaken bloom or something. So you flip over the top and you do it like that. I'm taking it out of there and put it into, I love those pretzels with the peanut butter inside. But not only are they delicious, but they make great things to wide opening. I open them up and I reach my hands in to get fertilizer and I close it back up. So they make good fertilizer tins. So anyway, there we got here. You can see that we just answered that question. Another thing irises aren't really crazy about, and I guess I have run over time already, so I need to really scoot along and skip a bunch of stuff. Water them in the morning. Do not water them at night. They don't like sitting in water. They like to have that water in the morning. The sunlight comes along, the photosynthesis happens, and everything is happy, and that water gets drawn up. When you water them at nighttime, that's not the best time to do it. So, potted rhizomes, if anybody should take some home today, and certainly somebody will, then don't let them freeze. When I say don't let them freeze, a hard freeze. If it's going to get down at 5 o'clock in the morning, it's going to be 32 degrees, and then by 7 o'clock, it's going to be 33 or 34. Don't worry about it. But if it's going to get down to, say, 11 o'clock at night, it's going to be 29 degrees, and in the morning, it's 7 o'clock in the morning, it's going to be 29 or 20 or 30 degrees. I usually haul mine in the garage overnight and then put them back out. So, do not mulch. That saves money to boot. So, I want to show you some happy rhizomes. I've already, these are the ones that I've planted, and you can see right now that these were done the first week of September, and look already at how the middle part of the fan is growing. So they're already, and you can see them over here. I don't know if, kind of looks vulgar, doesn't it? I don't know why it's always the middle one, but it's never the ends that grow first. So. But those are ones in my raised beds, and these are the ones that you see in the pots. The fact that it's growing some, you can see right away it was a happy division. So I don't want you to think that, you know, these you have to be careful with. You can't overwater them. Don't let them freeze. I don't want you to get the idea that the irises are hard to take care of, because they're not. In fact, here's where I throw my grass when I'm done bagging it and throwing it into this ditch that the builder left me. And when I throw my old clippings, that's where I put them from the irises. So there's a volunteer. And if that wasn't bad enough, even sometimes there's a whole clump of them. So they're not going to bloom where I'm throwing stuff because it has shade on it, but they still live. And here they come, I throw them away, didn't want to mess with them. So they're easy to grow and pretty hardy. So does anybody know about a reblooming iris? We have Encore azalea. Does anybody know about a reblooming iris? So I know Carol does, because I told her
Since you taught
yesterday.
me.
So yes, we have them there, and this is Daughter of Stars, which I have over here, or I have there somewhere. Daughter of Stars. Most of mine are not reblooming irises, but I took this picture 3 days ago. So it is, some irises are rebloomers. Not only did this guy rebloom, but look at it. I had already trimmed it.
Oh, wow.
And it put up a sprout, and there it goes. So some irises are rebloomers. In the catalog that I have, if you look at the top where the name of the iris is, if it's a rebloomer, it'll have an R in parentheses. So, pests and diseases, not very much. By far, the biggest problem I have is aphids. And I go out in the morning and I hit them with some Six. But this year alone, I probably only had to spray, I would say twice. I don't know what particular time of the year or what feature happens that attracts them there, but you walk out and there they are. Now, they're not going to kill an iris. They're just going to weaken it a little bit. Because I've never seen aphids take an iris leaf and all of a sudden, bang, it falls over and it's dead. It just sucks some of the life out of it, and that's all there is to it. It's not going to kill the iris. So, rhizome rot, this comes from too much water, sitting in a place where it doesn't get enough sun and it gets too much water, and you can smell it when you get rid of it, and you can also tell because the leaves, the fan starts falling as it rots down here and falls, pretty much it's all gone, and they're all allowing too much water. So, here we have, in the south, we sometimes get scorch when we have a lot of sun. all in a row and hot, and maybe a little bit of a lack of water leads to a scorch. And while I'm at it, I'm going to forget some stuff. When you're planting and reading about planting an iris, anybody who's ever read about it probably read leave the rhizome showing on top. However, if you read a little bit further and you read a little bit more places and sources, you'll find out that they'll tell you in the south you need to leave about 1/8 of an inch of soil, or maybe you need to cover it up just a little bit. That leave the rhizome showing thing is for all the people who are up north, North Carolina and further. When we live here in Georgia, that little extra 1/8 of an inch of soil is good for us because we have such a hot summer. So we have scorch down here. Not as common. You'll hear about these. The iris borer, I've never seen one. Have you ever seen one? I've never had one. The place that I have ordered some irises from, either Shriners or Sutton's, they say we don't have them out here. I don't know if that's a thing that they can state with some sort of certainty, but they say they don't have them. So a leaf spot happens. You'll see little brown spots occur. It's not deadly to the plant, just makes it unsightly. We all like beautiful green leaves and so forth. And so, in review, we have discussed the interesting facts, and we've learned the colors, and that purple is for royalty, and white is for purity, and Tennessee, and so we've learned all that. The different types we've gone over, and I've really concentrated on 2 types. The iris parts, we have the standard, fall, the beard, and Doug. What was that last one? The signal. Right. So yeah, and you'll see it. If you go look at an iris now in somebody's yard, you won't be able to do it without thinking about the signal. So we did a how-to on digging, dividing, and planting, and then we talked about pest and disease. So at this time, I will take some questions.
Now that we've missed your prime dividing time,
Yes.
anything we can do? We're gonna buy irises and put them in the ground somewhere? Anything we need to be careful of or watch?
I have a few irises over here that are like the Flint River Iris Lady sells. So they can be planted now. They just need to have some baby care. Meaning the temperature, the sun is not out as often, and the temperature is colder. So, for example, the most recent of mine were planted about 2 weeks ago, and I had to pull them in yesterday. Went out in the morning in the rain, put them in the back of the truck, and pull the truck in the garage. So they spend most of the day in there. I just have to make sure that they don't get too much water. So if you can fill, just to answer your question, if you can fill this container, that's pretty waterlogged. See, it's not dripping out of the bottom, but it's waterlogged. And I probably won't bother watering this iris for a week. So it's and that's how I decide when I want to water them. I pick up the container and I'm like, because you know what it was like when it was dry.
So if we haven't divided, does that mean we're off the hook and we missed our opportunity?
If you haven't divided, I would let them sit. I wouldn't divide them now.
Okay.
But I mean, it doesn't mean you can't. Because as I already told you, you're supposed to divide daylilies right around the same time in the fall. But I did it in the middle of July, and I showed you the pictures.
Right.
And I had one plant, and now I have 6. All 6 of them are alive, but it was stressful for them.
So I seriously thought that I would start dividing my daylilies now. Don't even do it.
I hesitate to give advice.
I won't come after you.
No.
I won't have my lawyer contact you.
I don't know as much about daylilies as I do irises, So I don't know, what kind of stress they go under this late in the season. I wouldn't say it's a complete no-no, but the optimum time is past. It needs to get some sunlight after they've been divided. So these can be planted, they just have to be baby, if anybody's interested. Before we go any further in passing around the book, if you're not interested in buying any irises, then let me say this. When I walk into, like at the Dream Festival, when I walk into the various little tents and the sections that people have, I hate to walk in because if I don't buy something, I hate to walk out, and I feel so bad. So it's like, oh, I like to look, but if I go in there, so and I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. Do not buy an iris from me because you don't want to hurt my feelings. If you're interested in buying an iris because I have one you like, then buy it. Otherwise, do not buy one. Look at the pretty pictures in the book and pass them on to somebody else. Do not. The price on these irises, when I sell them later on next year, will be $10 for a potted one and $8, same as a Flint River Lady, for a rhizome. However, because you are master gardeners, and because this is an inaugural event, and because
You love us.
I have about 80 of these at home, I didn't bring them all. I don't want to mess with them and care for them during wintertime, so I'm going to sell them for $9 instead of $10. And then the rhizomes, I'll sell them for $7 instead of $8. That's just because I just don't want the extra time out in the yard taking care of them. Every time that it gets down, it's going to be below freezing for 12 or 14 hours. I have to haul in 80 irises in my garage.
So let me ask you a question. If they're purchased today, would it be wise to just keep them in that container or put them in
I will leave them in the container all winter long.
in that container?
Right.
Okay.
And because it all, you can, and I don't know, the average person's not going to buy 20 of them in here. You might buy 2. And if you buy 2, you just pay attention to the weather. Sit it out in the sun, and then once in a while pick it up and see if it feels light or whatever. And if it's going to freeze, when I say freeze, if it's going to be 4 o'clock in the morning and all of a sudden it finally gets to 32 degrees, and then by 7 it's going to be up to 34, don't even bother with it. But if it's going to be what they call a hard freeze, then I just pull them in the garage or put them on the porch or something.